Chelmsford Town Manager Paul Cohen, and welcome to the November 2018 edition of the Town Managers Roundtable. I'm joined for this month's program by Colleen Stansfield, who former planning board member, works now in the community development office, a town meeting representative,
holiday decorating, parade committee now,
parade committee, all sorts of things, and Scott. Yes.
This is Shaun.
Shaun Shanahan, our new building commissioner.
Pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you. We're just noting the building commissioners that we've had in the town. So, welcome, Shaun.
Perfect.
And, so you've been on board now a couple months, right?
Been on since August 9th, correct.
Okay, so it's a couple months has gone by, and we thought, now that you've been settled in, sort of have you come on board and just sort of take an opportunity, sort of introduce yourself to the community and sort of give some thoughts and your first impressions and sort of what challenges lie ahead. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I recently came from the city of Lowell. I was a building commissioner in Lowell for about 7 years. Previously, before that, I held numerous other positions within the city of Lowell. As we said, just came into Chelmsford August 9th. I'm looking forward to working on some of the commercial projects we got going down in the 129 area, as well as dealing with any of the pedestrian housing issues that we have. And
sort of on your first few months, like, how does it feel different? In other words, obviously you've gone from a city of over 100,000 people to a town of 35,000 people, city to suburb, so makeup. What sort of how have you adjusted?
I would say that the overall workings of it, it's the same. I hate to say it, so to speak, animal.
Yeah. Same code. Obviously, same building, state codes.
Different solutions and different problems. I think that out here in Chelmsford, people are really looking to be dealt with on a more one-to-one basis and a more personal basis. So dealing with a lot more single-family houses than I was in the city of Lowell. We had a lot more multifamilies that we were dealing with, and multifamilies that are 100+ years old. So that's a big change, going from the multifamily housing to residential.
And has it been different in terms of, obviously with Lowell you had a larger staff in terms of local inspectors and so forth. Are you finding you're spending more time out of the office than you were when you were in Lowell, or is it the same? Or
so I would say that I'm spending more time out of the office than I was in Lowell, and I think that's because of we have one inspector that pretty much handles the residential side, and as we know, Chelmsford is growing on its commercial end, and we have, I was actually amazed with the number of commercial projects and inspections that we have going at this time.
Planning board's been busy.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good thing. That's what we need to bring additional revenues to the town.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
That's okay. I was just going to say, so how the staff being just the one inspector, so you're doing mostly the commercial? Mostly
the commercial, correct. Yeah. Most of the commercial, and the one inspector we do have handles the residential.
Marty.
And of course he's been here quite a while, so he's very adept to that, and it kind of fits right in.
But he's only part-time, so you have to pick up some of the slack on that
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely. So I handle the majority of the complaints inspections that we have. In other words, residential complaints that would occur during the day, and I put my cell phone number right on my business card, so it makes me obtainable during the day, especially when I'm out on the road, and that's what I want to be. I want to be able to that you can get me on the road. We had an instance, I think it was yesterday, that you were able to call me on the road, and I was 3 minutes away from the location, so I was able to get to the woman's house in about 4.5 minutes. And that's the kind of response time I want to have. I want to create a very customer service orientated department that provides.
That's almost right up against the fire department response time.
Yeah.
And towards that end, I mean, one of the things that's new, and I know you've sort of introduced it and had an introduction to it in Chelmsford, is the whole idea of online permitting and services. What's your sort of thoughts and experience with that?
So the online permitting, we're noticing more with the trades end of the building department, electrical and plumbing, that they're having a tougher time with it than more or less the general contractors. Electricians and plumbers generally have less of a staff base in an office that would complete those transactions online and apply for permits. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with that on a one-on-one basis. We do have 2 kiosks in the office that they can come in and get assistance doing that. And generally, once they're through it the first time, they can do it on their own. It's not a problematic process.
If they remember their passwords, that's the biggest
I make
downfall.
I make them write it down on their folder now.
Do you? Good, good.
Yeah, because like you said, we're in an instant world where people want to use, get online, with permits or, as you said, on immediate sort of response and so forth. And sort of in the area of immediate response, one of your responsibilities is to act sort of in safety instances for immediate response. And while it's on my mind, why don't you tell us about the experience with Lawrence in terms of they had the incident in Lawrence and sort of how that network works and your response there in
So
terms of
with
a multi-town issue.
With Lawrence being part of the MBCIA and the Building Inspectors Association,
I mean, it's about the gas explosion. That's what I'm making.
Yeah.
I should have been a little more. Yeah.
I got that one.
we're all in constant contact with state inspectors. I'm also a member of Cal OES, which is an emergency response team that is nationwide, so we react to all natural disasters, all emergencies, and can be, brought up and set to go at a moment's notice. And when Lawrence happened, and Paul, as you're aware, even the mayor reached out to through the MMA for any assistance that we could give. We were immediately dispatched and asked if we could help out with emergency inspections and so on. And they're still also in need of inspections with gas inspections and so on. So we've spent some time down there, as well as most neighboring communities have, out of good faith, sent their inspectors down to help out. So that's something that just like you would with fire and police, have that joint interaction, we try to do the same. So.
Kind of like a regionalization.
Absolutely.
And then I did see, where we stand as we're filming, they've completed the in-ground mainline replacements of the mains, and now they have to hook up all the individual services as well as the appliances.
Yeah, so there's multiple stages of it, and I believe, as I've heard through my circles, that they have completed the infrastructure work, which was a monstrous task. But now it leaves an even more monstrous task. That now everything is maybe gas ready, but they're going to homes that may not have been inspected or may not have been entered by an inspectional agency for quite some years. So they're dealing with hazardous materials, lead paint, things like that we cannot sign off on until these things are remediated. And also there may be some infrastructure work within the house that needs to be done before then. So all that has to go into play before these homes actually get their actual gas up and running.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest problem. Is it starts as a gas explosion, gas connection problem, and then you go into the dwelling and you find other code issues that you can't ignore.
Correct.
You can't say, well, if we weren't here, we wouldn't
Correct.
have seen this.
Correct.
And I think that's sort of slowing things down.
Yeah, part of our licensing and our certifications is, once we, it's hard for us to leave that location in a dangerous or unsafe manner. Therefore, we could potentially go in and actually make the situation worse by having to, even shut that building down until it's been properly remediated and handled. So they're dealing with that, and just like Lowell, you're looking at 100+ year housing stock with multifamilies, and it's tough with budget times as tight as it is. To have all these inspected, so reaching out and helping out does help. We've had our plumbing inspector down there as well, and I'll also say that that gentleman went down. He went down on his own time after his regularly scheduled hours. So it is a community of inspectors that do reach out and help.
I even read that they were flying people in from California, inspectors, to do that.
Is that true?
So they actually brought in a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Wow.
They actually brought in I believe it was Carnival or Royal Caribbean, brought in a cruise ship
house them all.
to house the people who were being brought in to perform work, inspections, and so forth.
I didn't realize there was so much to the bringing up the building code to what the standard is.
Once you perform work, you need to bring it up to the current existence of codes. And that also, that puts the taxing on fire prevention officers.
Right.
Things like that, because now we're looking at inspections, what we call SDI inspections and things like that. All that stuff needs to occur. Which will be a great feather in the cap for Lawrence in the Andover area when the stuff is complete, because you're going to have a bunch of safe houses.
Right.
And then obviously you have the natural disaster areas such as Florida, where Mexico Beach was wiped out and so forth. Have you ever had the opportunity to respond, sort of long distance? As
Yes,
an inspector?
yes. So I've responded. I've been to Puerto Rico in the last occasion.
Okay.
It's devastating. These as close as you would ever get to what you would think a third world country is, and these people who are used to living as you and I live are now forced within this, this living situation.
So was it after the hurricane that you went down to Puerto Rico?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, it's devastating. Not something I would ever want our families to go through.
No.
Right.
Well, we've had a lot of tornadoes lately.
Yeah.
And the thought of having to respond is, it's immediate, right? I mean, you often get called out on a moment's notice. Right?
It's immediate. It would normally be with. Lawrence was a little different because there's no travel involved.
Yeah.
So there's no airline tickets. There's no, and when you travel to something like that, you foot your own bill as far as travel expenses. So, there's a lot to go in that, and that's something that you're going to want to do. You're not sitting there, someone's not sending you airline tickets and so on and so forth. But in a situation that's a local situation, it's just a matter of a drive out. In a deployment situation, you could be looking at 2 or 3 days before you would actually be leaving. Yeah.
Okay. Now, part of, again, so you're busy with the response, but also the other part is you also have to keep up to date with the changing building code.
Correct.
And obviously, as we mentioned earlier, it's a uniform state building code, but I'm not sure that people realize how often that code is updated.
Well, the code is
talk
up.
About that, yeah.
The code in the state of Massachusetts, we follow 780 CMR, which is a Massachusetts state building code, but we also follow the International Building Code, International Residential Code, and any of its brother and sister codes, all the way down to the pool and spa code. Anything that the state adopts. State of Massachusetts, we get changes emailed to us every single day. Amendments, so on and so forth. And some of them can be as minor as 3 or 4 words, changing a shall or a may, or some of them could be eliminating or putting in a whole new section of the code. So that happens on a daily basis. And that's good, because as problems arise and as we find defective equipment, there's 3 or 4 years ago that I won't mention the name, but there were a bunch of bathroom fans that had been taken off the market and faulty, and causing house fires. So because of that, the code gets changed and gets updated, so on and so forth, and it happens on a daily basis. So I'm glad we have that. And yes, it is a struggle, and there's a lot of schooling. As you know, we need 45 hours every minimum of 45 hours.
I was just going to ask you that,
of
how often?
continuing education, which with doing all your other things, you have to do that, and that's a requirement. The state will take your certification from you.
Yeah, so it's a big responsibility, and so you've got the code, but then you've got another part of your title, which is zoning enforcement officer. So that you've got the code issues, and then you got the zoning issues. Yep. And I guess, sort of introduce this, which do you prefer more before doing the code issues or the zoning enforcement?
I'm a student of the code, and that's how I got into this business. So I would have to say the building portion is my favorite. The zoning, as you know, is the newer portion. I was the enforcement officer in Lowell for zoning, the chief enforcement officer. But I wasn't the one who was writing decisions and so on and so forth. So delving into the zoning more, it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's a good challenge. I mean, I think anytime you stop educating yourself and stop working your craft, I think that you're not doing yourself a favor. So that to me is exciting. It's to be learning that stuff. The code comes natural to me. I've been in it so long that the changes and stuff like that, it just naturally, it's almost through osmosis, it comes to me. So this is good. This is getting me back into it and in the swing of things. And I have 3 zoning books. I have one at home, one in my briefcase, and one on my desk. So I get hit with questions all the time, and because
You're relatively new, so how do you?
and because my cell phone is on my card, sometimes I'm fielding calls on a Saturday at home, or I'm
Right.
fielding calls in the evening, and I want to be sharp enough to have those answers. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, hold on a second, let me slow down, let me look this up. I want to give you the correct answer. I think rather than spouting it off the top of your head and having that book next to you and being able to answer it that way is best.
Have you found any challenges with our code in town?
Well, we've talked about rewriting some of the issues that we've had recently in town as far as the
Well, we had lot area, that was an issue. That was the
lot area and domestic chickens.
Yeah.
So, and we're looking at those. You know, I think that zoning it's a living document, it's a living, breathing document that needs to change. If your zoning and your zoning sits there forever as the same, and you don't change it and you don't work at it, you're going to end up with a flawed zoning code. You need to change with the times. You need to adjust with the times, and I think you need to just work that into how society is changing. I mean, look at just the time you've been here, Paul, how the town has changed and grown in different areas and changed in different areas. Things that weren't maybe palatable back then are palatable now, and maybe vice versa. So, you know, changing with the times is a good thing, and I think, you know, that zoning is everything I've always been taught about zoning is that's a living, breathing document that is bound to change.
And we haven't had a major rezoning sort of effort in the town in quite some time, so we've sort of been doing little things as they come up.
Yep.
Yeah, most of it has been sort of overlays over existing zoning.
Right.
As opposed to a change.
To help promote business like the 129.
And I think the overlay districts and stuff like that are a great way to handle that, because you're creating something that can be area specific, and that's generally what we didn't do in zoning.
But it also promotes what you want to go there without changing the underlying zoning.
Correct. Absolutely.
So,
And then you have to attend the Board of Appeals meetings, right? So if people come in and seek a variance or you know, which is basically a waiver from the zoning, you attend those meetings in sort of an advisory capacity to that.
Yeah, so certainly. If they have more or less would be, you know, kind of pinpoint building code issues that would result in, you know, a zoning question. That's what they have me there for, and I'm very happy to do that. It's actually a process that I like to be involved in.
yeah, we were missing a building commissioner for a couple of meetings, and it was quite noticeable not having that.
Yeah, well, it's that, like, again, that finite technical knowledge that sometimes need to lay into that person obtaining a variance, not always to not obtain it,
Right.
but to obtain it. Sometimes there are finite building issues. A doorway in the front versus a doorway in the rear. We have some very specific wording as far as doorways in the front for our accessory apartments.
Yep.
There are situations where that doorway in the back for emergency life safety situations does not work well, whether there be a pool in the back, whether there be other surrounding or topographical things in the back of the house that make rescuing someone from that home a difficult situation. But that apartment could still be part of it if, you know, we grant that variance and it follows in with the neighborhood characteristics. So finite building things that people would not normally think of on a regular basis surrounding life safety. I think that's a good point for having to be there.
Absolutely, which goes along with the address that they give them, just to note that there is a separate unit.
Absolutely. And that's one thing our fire prevention office is phenomenal with. We're out there on a daily basis, even our inspectors. We notice when there's not an address on a house. We notice when it's not visible from the road and it's not opposing colors from the house. That is critical when it comes to time, and in time for first response. And people don't necessarily think about it. You know, they want the nice gold letters on the yellow house.
Yeah.
And great, it looks great, but we can't see it from 50 feet from the road.
They don't
Little
always
things like that we
correlate
do. And I've actually gone up and knocked on doors if I'm looking for a house and have noticed that and said, hey, introduce myself, this would be a code. It's actually part of the building code.
Not to have a number on your house?
No, to have a number on your house, and it has to be opposing colors from the house, and it has to be, there are minimum dimensions that they have to be, so you can see them from a distance. So that's stuff that the fire prevention office here is very conscientious and very active, and it's a pleasure to work with them.
And part of also your aspect, part of your job is a revenue component. I mean, your office brings in over $1 million a year in permit fees.
Yeah.
And not sort of get too far into the weeds in that, but if a project comes in, and obviously the permit fee is based on the value of the project, right? Mm-hmm. How do you, as the building commissioner, how do you assess that or evaluate the value of a project? Somebody comes in, they're putting a deck on a house, or they're putting in an extra room, and so forth. So how's that process play out?
We're fairly lucky here. Marty and I have been in the business quite a long time, so we know when a guy comes to us with a deck that's $3,000. We know it's just not. However, there's some common sense that lays into it. Our projected cost is on the entire cost of the project. So there is a formula that we actually have built into our permitting software that we punch in a dollar amount, and it calculates it against what the building costs in the area are, and it comes up with a price. We're also in the process, as of November 1st, implementing on all commercial projects. We're going to implement a final cost affidavit for all commercial projects that basically, there's a lot of change orders in these large commercial projects. So you get a project that comes in at maybe $2.2 million for initial application price. Well, in the end, we've found out through history that there's potential that it's going to be $5 or $6 million. So potentially the lost income to the town is double the permit fees that we initially received. So now we're going to require them, through their design professional, to submit an updated cost, and we call it the truth and affidavit, and an itemized listing of what the actual cost is. Before they get the certificate of occupancy, they will need to issue back a check to the town for the missing permit fee cost. And that's generally because of change orders. It's not that everybody grossly underestimates their project. There are just legitimate change orders, whether you change the style of roof, the style of siding, whether you update fixtures, things like that. There are just change orders that happen.
Will this be more for commercial?
Right now, we're just going to implement it on the commercial side, and that's just simply to get the paperwork down correct. To make sure that paperwork is coming in correct, because we're also talking about a mathematical accounting of what happens. So if we do everything all at once, there's a potential for it to not be accurate, and I need it to be 100% accurate. So we're going to do commercial first, and we'll see how that goes, and then we'll potentially phase in some style of residential, whether it has to do with just a certain project type, or I don't have a need to do it to repairs and decks and things like that. So maybe if we get someone who's putting on an accessory apartment or something to that effect. So maybe we'll go by project type, but it'll eventually resort back to that. Also, again, that also comes back to revenue for the town. And let's face it, in today's budget society, we need additional revenues that are, sort of speak, hanging out there. And a lot of this does not fall on the homeowner in a residential situation. Right. It's the contractor. And it's the contractor who misses that step or misses that dollar amount target, and they're the ones responsible for that. So, I think the town of Chelmsford really needs to capture that one way or another.
I mean, is it often the case that people, particularly residential, may do work beyond, or even commercial, do work beyond the scope of the permit that they've been pulled on?
There is that, and there's also changes that'll happen in the field that for one reason or another, we need to extend that foundation 3 feet. Maybe we've hit some type of ledge or some type of bad soil and need to extend till we hit a good soil type. So that certainly does happen. And there are the few that just grossly underestimate for the purpose of permit fees.
Well, probably the worst example is they do work without a permit.
That is the worst.
Yeah.
So if they work without a permit, what we're going to do is, we're going to evaluate the situation, and Marty and myself, we evaluate every situation differently. We know after these years in the business, did you do it by mistake, or is this something that you do on a regular occasion? And generally, we know the players. Even coming from Lowell, it's still the same players.
Right.
So, that's potential of triple the fees. Triple the fees of what your permit fees are. That's going to hurt. And that's one thing that we have to do, because what's going to happen, and I try to tell everybody this, that a building permit is not a fee. A building permit is basically an insurance policy for you. You get qualified individuals to go out there minimum of 3 times to inspect your project and make sure that your contractor that you hired is being paid to do it properly and properly doing it. There's been many times I've called contractors and said, hey, you're not doing this right. Get on the ball, tighten it up, do this, and that. So it's an insurance policy for you, as well as your insurance company now requires you, when you put an addition on a home or do remodeling to your home, they require you to see that building permit and that certificate of completion. So you're only, if a claim happens, you're only hurting yourself if you don't do that.
We try to tell people that in the office as well. You're paying for the professional inspections.
If you can adjust that way of thinking, that it's just a fee, and the fees are minimal compared to what you get. 3 inspections. To hire a third-party inspector for fire and blocking, for inspector for commercial fire blocking inspection, is $2,000 a visit. And think of what you would pay an architect to show up and inspect your job site. So it's a benefit, and that's why I call it working without the benefit of a building permit.
Right.
And I think that's really important to get across.
Yeah, it's a critical, and oftentimes you see it when the house goes for a real estate transaction, right? That the home inspector will come in, or the property owner, and then they'll find material there that may have been done without a permit, and then that creates real problems.
In addition, we're working on one today.
In-law apartment.
We're working on one today that actually was been taxed as a 2-family since 2005, and it's a single family. It's a single family all day. It could never be a 2-family. So, an assessor really doesn't have that. They can certainly go in, and what they do is they assess what they see. They go in and see 2 kitchens, 2 living spaces, two living rooms and stuff like that. They're going to call it a 2-family. That doesn't necessarily mean the legal use of that house is a 2-family. It means that's what the assessor saw. So I would encourage any homeowner, if the assessor is changing your classification like that, make a phone call to the building department to say, hey, am I a legal 2-family? Because, if you're paying the taxes for that many years, I understand if you're frustrated, but legally it's still only a single family.
Right.
Okay. We've got about a minute left in the program. Is there any issue or message you want to get out in our final minute?
I would like everybody to know that, if you have any issues, if you think anything in your home is unsafe or needs to be looked at, give us a call. We want safe houses out there, safe housing. If you're renting a home and you feel that something is not right or unsafe, give us a call. At the building department, we'll get someone out there to take a look at it. We don't charge for initial inspections. That's what we do.
And obviously, to find you in the town offices, you're located in the lower level, sort of by the elevator, probably the best way to describe it.
Until I talk you into getting me a new office.
Yeah, just so people understand where they are in the building. And fortunately, we do have all the inspections, in close proximity to each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, the plumbing, electrical building is in your office, the fire inspector's down the hall, the community development director is next door, and so it's convenient. So.
One-stop shopping.
Thank you, Shaun.
Welcome to
Appreciate your
town.
time
Thank you very
today.
much.
Welcome, and appreciate your work going ahead.
Thank you.